It's time to hold on to your luggage in Chapter 1, Loose Cargo. Not much of note happens in this one other than setting up a guy wanting to get revenge for his brother later on. The most interesting thing is the unidentified stowaway who wanted a free ride but ended up getting a one-way trip into the afterlife. The main problem is Link, that only has 2 memories and they're technically about the same event, so it's not even 2 completely different points in time. I won't be too harsh on it, it's the first chapter and you can't exactly have a climax without a gradual build, but it could have had more to it. Narratively, it succeeds in showing how doomed the ship is when 2 people die before they're even done handling the cargo, but these decayed bones could have done with some more meat. It's time to bundle up and grab the hot chocolate for Chapter 2, A Bitter Cold. This one is so much better than the first one, and not just because the hammocks in Part 1 are a tremendous help in identifying several people on the list. Part 3 is probably the one relatively casual memory that the one that dies is a cow and they're laughing and having a grand old time as the body gets hauled in the background. Part 1 is actually pretty heartbreaking with how desperate William sounds trying to get Syed to get up and drink something since the lung disease had gotten so bad. Another glowing point for this chapter is that it chronologically introduces third mate Martin Parrott, one of the best characters in the game, and you'll find out why later. I like this one. It has 3 memories, so it's got far more length, and they're good memories, one showing the camaraderie and the other 2 showcasing tragedy. It's time for one cursed fish meal in Chapter 5, Unholy Captives. The highlight of this one is the cook thinking it'd be a great idea to talk about cooking the mermaid after they already proved to still possibly be alive and then trying to make a grab for her shell. A steward of the captain also tried to warn them about the dangers in a calm and collected manner by cutting off another crew member's leg and condemning him to bleed out. He was put in with the mermaids for his troubles. Other than that, another unfortunate soul being punished for the cook's actions and a couple of narrow misses from the mermaid spikes, this one doesn't have too much going for it. It's very much a case of this is a good chapter, but it's a Mino competing with giants, a veritable in-between chapter to tie the mermaids in with the horrors that would come in later on. I would say it's a foreboding of things to come, but the player's already seen Chapter 7 and probably also Chapter 6, so it's really more foreboding for the crew in the game. It's time for futile fleeing in Chapter 9, Escape. Things are settling down, no more supernatural elements, but this might be the saddest chapter because of the needless deaths. It starts in the aftermath of Chapter 7 with a man succumbing to a lost arm by the Kraken, while up deck there's an attempt to stop people from fleeing. I like how this shows the more compassionate side of the captain because he actually orders him to let them go. Emily just beats him to the punch. What happens downstairs is even sadder. Thomas getting stabbed for trying to warn about a mutiny, the 2 involved killed in a scuffle, and Thomas bleeding out. This chapter may not have the glitz and the glamour of the previous chapters, but what it does have is pure unrelenting tragedy. Rest in peace, Thomas. It's time to pay a visit to our only friend in Chapter 10, The End. Ironically, this is the first chapter you experience in the game, following the game's theme of starting at the end of something and then working backwards. It's certainly a strong starter for the player and finisher for the story, with a mutiny going on and the captain taking on all 3 of them at once, rip and tear. It also marks the sad end of the man who's appeared in the most cutscenes in this game. That's right, good old Henry Brennan. Rest in peace, Beanie Man. You knew the game was going to be tragic when one of the first memories is the captain taking his own life. The hole in his heart for his lost wife hurts so much more than the stab wound in his side. As both the ending of the game and the start of every player's journey into this tragic madness, it may not be as exciting as the other chapters, but what it does have is plenty of that good old tragic drama. It's time to look for smoking guns in Chapter 3, Murder. Those last 2 chapters may have shown some tragedies, but this is where the ball really gets rolling and the villain of the game makes himself known, Edward Nichols. Murdering a man, framing another man for it, and kidnapping 2 members of a royal family so he can make off with treasure, he's about as twisted as they come. That moment you witness the execution that's in the drawing and then later realize he was framed is such a wham moment, though not as surprising. This is also the first chronological appearance of Captain Robert, perhaps the most tragic character in the game as he's giving the orders to execute a framed man. Between the murders, the framed execution, and setting up Chapter 4, this is where things really start getting spicy, and it's easily one of the better chapters. It's time to put it on voicemail in Chapter 4, The Calling. I like to refer to it as the misadventures of Edward Nichols because this is the thrilling sequel where he gets exactly what he deserves by the remaining Formosan. It's also the first appearance of the mermaids and suggests the shells are connected to them since plunging one into the mercury in the chest knocks them out. It's actually a pretty tragic story since Bang sacrificed himself trying to save Lynn, but she already met her end when a mermaid clawed open her throat. The only one he saved is the snake Nichols, who was cowering on the floor while his friends were being picked apart by the mermaids. He really deserved what he got. In introducing a supernatural element, showing a pretty sad tale of the Formosans and the satisfaction of Nichols' villainy cut short, this chapter is very goated. It's time for a stage of grief in Chapter 8, Bargain. If there's a beast in this chapter, it would have to be Captain Robert, because he was clearly livid, and I think it has to do with his departed wife. He flat out kills two of the mermaids, and not so subtly implies the third one's next. Seems she made the wise decision to call off the Kraken. This is also the final chapter you can access and shows the fate of Martin, who died in perhaps the noblest way ever in freeing the last mermaid and asking her to see the ship home in return. It also seems to show how everything got snowballing because the steward locked in there decided to grab the shell out of the Quicksilver, suffering the same burned arm fate. While not nearly as exciting as some other chapters, it's the one to nicely wrap up the game's story in a neat bow, and I'd say it's a worthy reward for figuring everything out. It's time to don our Dracelian armor in Chapter 6, Soldiers of the Sea. I gotta say, Winston was absolutely the MVP of this part with how he lost his mate while taking a spike to the shoulder, rips it out, grabs a blunderbuss, and takes out the second crab rider as he's dying. Granted, Charles deserves some props too for throwing the lantern that killed the first one, which is pretty impressive for someone who was losing his lunch at the sight of the crew making more lunch. While the mermaids had gotten kills, this was the first time where the horror really starts. The unlucky guy in part 1 just straight up gets struck by lightning and the crab rider spears someone while his body's still falling. The chapter is even introduced perfectly, an unfortunate soul getting shot through the wall, and you can just make out the beast through the wall, wondering just what that thing is since it isn't clear. Between the gruesome kills, two people just straight up get decapitated, and the heroism of the crew in facing all this, this is a fantastic chapter that takes things from 1 to 11, and the title could easily mean either side. It's time to witness Hell's Fury in Chapter 7, The Doom. Oh boy, this is the big one. Not only the most devastating event, but the moment for every player where the game goes from simple mutiny or piracy to holy Neptune, are those tentacles up there? Even part 1 is foreboding, tying it in with the first chapter with a man furious about his brother's accidental death and taking it out on the one who inadvertently caused it. The ship's artist even meets his end here in a most undignified manner, and it's such a bloodbath that it makes the crab riders look like puppies. Even the cannons were useless against this monster. One man was straight up ripped in half with his entrails spilling out, and another is reduced to a torso by an unfortunately timed cannon blast. This is by far the most gruesome and violent chapter. Aptly named, this is where it goes from they're facing troubles and obstacles to they are 100% without a doubt boned. It makes you feel sorry for the crew as they desperately scramble uselessly. It's time to write up our final report on the Obra Dinn. From start to end, this game does a fantastic job keeping you hooked and making you want to find out what happened to get them here, since the game's all about working backwards. With the obvious exception of a certain deceiving kidnapping monster, all the crew can be sympathized with to varying degrees, and I will always say that Winston is a gigachad and a goat. Rest in peace. When you finally piece things together with the mermaids and the shells and see what Henry Evans had to do to keep the truth alive, it's like being gut-punched by a kraken. The fact that many of the better chapters are closer to the middle shows how great the game is at build-up and climax. If you haven't already played it, then you probably just got spoiled for this entire game, so there's that, but still a great game that I'd easily recommend to anyone who likes a good mystery.